When Karen from the HOA parked her luxury SUV across my barn doors, blocking my livestock from feed and water, she thought her neighborhood rules trumped common sense. Big mistake. By sunrise, her precious car wasn't just towed, it was guest of honor in the cow pen. The morning sun hadn't even fully risen when I heard the familiar sound of tires crunching over gravel. I stepped out of the barn, wiping my hands on my jeans just in time to see Karen's sleek white Lexus roll to a stop, right across my barn doors. Again. This wasn't the first time. Last week, she'd blocked the entrance for an hour while she inspected the property line. The week before that, she'd left a nasty note on my tractor, calling it an eyesore that violated HOA guidelines. Never mind that my family had owned this land for 3 generations before the HOA even existed. Took a deep breath, counted to 3, and walked over. Karen was already out of her car, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched on her head like some kind of suburban sheriff. "You're blocking my barn," I said, keeping my voice level. She didn't even look up from her clipboard. "Just a quick property check. HOA received a complaint about unauthorized structures." I gestured at the wide-open barn doors behind her SUV. "I need to get my livestock fed and watered. Move your car." She finally glanced up, lips pursed. "This won't take long. Besides, your animals can wait a few minutes." A few minutes? Right. Last time she'd said that, it turned into 45. My cows didn't run on HOA time. "Karen," I said, voice tight, "if you don't move that car in the next 60 seconds, I'm calling a tow truck." That got her attention. She scoffed, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "You can't tow an HOA officer's vehicle for conducting official business." "I can, when it's parked on private property, blocking access to my animals." I pulled out my phone. 50 seconds. "Her," Smirk faltered. "You're being unreasonable. The HOA has every right." 40. She huffed, but I saw the flicker of hesitation. She hadn't expected me to push back. "Fine." She jabbed her key fob, and the Lexus beeped. "But this isn't over. That barn still needs approval, and those rusted trailers by the fence? Violation." I didn't answer. Just watched as she climbed into her car, revved the engine like she was making some grand exit, and peeled out, kicking up dust. I turned back to the barn, shaking my head. This was getting old. And Karen was about to learn the EA. Hard way, farmers don't forget. And we sure as hell don't back down. Karen's little stunt with the Lexus was just the beginning. Over the next few days, the HOA violations piled up like manure in a feedlot. A notice about my unapproved gravel driveway. A warning about the excessive height of my hay bales. And my personal favorite, a citation for the unsightly chicken coop that had been sitting in the same spot for a decade. I crumpled the latest letter and tossed it onto the growing pile on my kitchen counter. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. This was a full-on harassment campaign, and Karen was leading the charge. I grabbed my phone and dialed the only person in the HOA who didn't treat me like a nuisance. Martha, the elderly secretary, who had lived in the neighborhood before it became a hotbed of power-tripping busybodies. "Martha," I said the second she picked up, "what's the deal with all these violations? Half this stuff wasn't a problem 6 months ago." She sighed. "It's that new compliance committee, hon. Karen's running it, and she's got a few others wrapped around her finger. They're pushing through all kinds of new standards." "Standards?" I snorted. "More like excuses to fine people." "I don't disagree," Martha said quietly. "But unless enough homeowners push back, there's not much I can do." I clenched my jaw. Push back. That's exactly what I needed to do. Next morning, I drove into town and parked outside the HOA office, a small, overly polished building that looked more like a spa than a place where property disputes got settled. Inside, Karen sat behind the front desk, typing away with the smug efficiency of someone who enjoyed wielding petty authority. She looked up as I walked in, her smile razor-thin. "Here to finally discuss your violations?" "Here to discuss your violations," I said, slapping a folder onto the counter. Inside were time-stamped photos. Karen's Lexus parked illegally across my barn doors, her trespassing onto my property, even a shot of her tossing a cigarette butt into my pasture. She barely glanced at them. These are meaningless. I was performing official HOA duties. Funny, I said, because trespassing and littering aren't in the HOA bylaws, but I bet the county sheriff would find them real interesting. Her smirk wavered. Is that a threat? No, I said, leaning in. It's a promise. Back off or I take this to someone who actually has authority. For a second, I thought I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Then she straightened, her voice dripping with condescension. You're wasting your time. The HOA has full jurisdiction over property aesthetics. And your little farm? It's an eyesore. Expect more fines. I stared at her, the last thread of patience snapping. Diplomacy had failed. Paperwork had failed. Time for Plan B. That evening, I sat on my porch, watching the sunset paint the fields gold. My neighbor Jake, a retired mechanic and occasional troublemaker, ambled over, a knowing glint in his eye. Heard you had a fun chat with Karen today, I smirked. Oh, it was enlightening, he chuckled, taking a sip of his beer. So, what's the move? I looked toward the barn, then back at him. You still got that tow rig? His grin widened. You thinking what I'm thinking? I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Karen wanted a war? Fine. But she wasn't gonna like how I fought back. Midnight. On the farm was never truly silent. Cows shifted in their pens, crickets chirped in the tall grass, and the occasional owl hooted from the old oak near the fence line. Tonight, though, there was another sound. The low rumble of Jake's tow truck rolling up the gravel drive, headlights off. He stepped out, grinning under the dim glow of a half moon. You sure about this? I glanced toward Karen's house, just visible through the trees. All the lights were off. Never been more sure? Jake chuckled, slapping the side of his truck. All right, then. Let's relocate some luxury. The plan was simple. Hook up Karen's Lexus, tow it into the cow pen, and leave it where the herd could properly inspect it. No damage, just a lesson. We moved quickly. Jake backed the tow truck up to Karen's driveway while I kept watch. The Lexus sat there, gleaming under the moonlight like some kind of trophy. Jake crouched by the front tires, attaching the wheel lift with practiced ease. You ever done this before? I whispered. He snorted. Let's just say I've repossessed a few vehicles in my day. The Lexus gave a soft beep as the hydraulics lifted its front end off the ground. My pulse jumped. If Karen woke up now, this would get ugly fast. But the house stayed dark. Jake secured the straps and gave me a thumbs up. Ready for transport. I hopped into the tow truck's passenger seat and we crept forward at a crawl, the Lexus rolling silently behind us. The cows lifted their heads as we approached the pen, curious but calm. Right there, I said, pointing to the center of the enclosure. Jake maneuvered carefully, lowering the car onto the soft earth. The Lexus settled with a gentle thud, its pristine white paint a stark contrast against the mud and hay. I hopped out and unlatched the gate, letting the cows wander closer. Daisy, the boldest of the herd, sniffed at the bumper, leaving a long streak of slobber on the hood. Jake snapped a picture with his phone. Oh, this is gold, I grinned. Wait till morning. We slipped out, closing the gate behind us. The cows circled the car, already nibbling at the side mirrors. By sunrise, Karen's precious Lexus would be christened with hoof prints, mud, and maybe a few cow pies for good measure. As we drove away, Jake glanced at me. She's gonna lose her mind. Yep. Worth it? I didn't even hesitate. Every second. Back at the house, I poured 2 glasses of whiskey. We clinked them together, toasting the coming storm. Because when Karen saw her car in the cow pen, All hell was gonna break loose. The scream ripped through the morning air like a fire alarm. I was sipping coffee on the porch when it happened, a high-pitched shriek of pure outrage that sent birds scattering from the trees. I didn't even need to look to know what had happened. Karen had found her Lexus. I took a slow, deliberate sip and watched as she stormed across the field in silk pajamas and slippers, her face twisted in fury. The cows, unbothered, lounged around her car like it was just another piece of farm equipment. The Lexus was now gloriously decorated, mud splattered up the doors, hoof prints denting the hood, and Daisy contentedly licking the driver's side. Window. Karen skidded to a stop at the fence, her slippers sinking into the muck. "What the hell is this?" I raised my mug. "Morning, Karen. Sleep well?" She jabbed a finger at her car. You towed my car into a cow pen?" "Funny story," I said, setting my coffee down. "See, I woke up last night and saw this strange vehicle parked in my pasture. Thought it might be abandoned. So I had it moved somewhere. Safer." Her face turned an impressive shade of purple. "I'm calling the police!" "Go ahead," I said, pulling out my phone. "I'll call them too. Maybe they'd like to see the security footage of you trespassing on my property last night." Her rage faltered for half a second. "What?" I tapped my screen and held it up, a crystal-clear video of her parking across my barn doors, smirking as she walked away. "Funny how that works, huh?" She opened her mouth, then snapped it shut. The wheels were turning behind her eyes. She hadn't expected evidence. Before she could regroup, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up the driveway. Deputy Haskins, a no-nonsense man who'd grown up in this county, stepped out and tipped his hat. "Morning. Got a call about a stolen vehicle?" Karen whirled on him. "He took my car and put it in a cow pen." Haskins glanced at the Lexus, then at me. I shrugged. "Just relocated it from private property. She's been blocking my barn for weeks," Karen spluttered. That's not what happened." Haskins sighed and pulled out his notepad. "Ma'am, you got proof this was malicious?" I handed him my phone. "Got proof she was trespassing?" He watched the video, his expression flat. Then he looked at Karen. "You parked on his land?" She crossed her arms. "I'm HOA compliance. I have authority—" "Not to block access to livestock, you don't," Haskins cut in. "County law trumps HOA rules. You're lucky he didn't have it impounded." Karen's jaw dropped. So he just gets away with this?" Haskins gave her a long look. "Tell you what, I won't cite you for trespassing if you drop the complaint. Sound fair?" She looked ready to explode. But with no leverage, she had no play. "Fine," she hissed. Then she pointed at me. "This isn't over." I smiled. Looking forward to it. Haskins waited until Karen was stomping back to her house before shaking his head. "You're gonna have hell to pay with that HOA now." I glanced at the cows, now using her Lexus as a scratching post. "Worth it." As the cruiser pulled away, Jake's truck rolled up. He took one look at the scene and burst out laughing. "Oh, this is beautiful." I grabbed my coffee. "Just wait till the HOA meeting. Because if Karen wanted a fight, she was about to learn what happened when you pissed off the whole neighborhood." The HOA emergency meeting was packed. Every seat in the community center was filled. Farmers in work boots, suburbanites in polo shirts, even old man Wilkins, who usually slept through these things, all here for one reason. The showdown between me and Karen. She sat at the front table, back stiff, lips pressed into a tight line. The other board members shuffled papers, avoiding eye contact. They knew what was coming. OA. President Gregg cleared his throat. "Let's, address the recent incident." Karen slammed her hands on the table. "Incident? He towed my car into a cow pen." A few muffled laughs erupted from the crowd. Even Gregg's mustache twitched. I leaned back in my chair. "After she blocked my barn doors for the third time, while cattle were inside." Martha, sitting in the front row, held up printed photos. Karen's Lexus parked across my property, time stamped. She passed them around. The mood shifted instantly. Old man Wilkins squinted at a photo. "That's illegal, ain't it? Blocking livestock access?" Greg rubbed his temples. "Karen, is this true?" She bristled. "I was conducting official HOA. You were trespassing." Jake cut in from the back. "Sheriff confirmed it." The room erupted. Farmers started listing Karen's other offenses: harassing kids for biking on sidewalks, fining Mrs. Henderson for overgrown wildflowers that were actually native plants. Even some non-farmers joined in, tired of her power trips. Greg raised his hands. All right. Clearly we need to review some policies." Karen's face turned red. "You're just going to let him—" "Actually," Greg interrupted, "we're voting on your position. Motion to remove Karen from the compliance committee?" Hands shot up. The vote was nearly unanimous. Karen looked like she'd been slapped. "This is outrageous!" Mrs. Henderson stood, smiling sweetly. "No, dear. What's outrageous is you bullying hard-working folks. Now sit down." The room burst into applause. Karen grabbed her purse and stormed out, heels clicking like gunshots. After the meeting, neighbors surrounded me, slapping my back and laughing. Even Greg shook my hand. "Guess we needed a wake-up call about overreach." Jake grinned. "So what now?" I looked at the crowd, farmers and suburbanites actually talking, making plans to fix broken fences, literal and metaphorical. "Now?" I shrugged. "We get back to work and maybe keep an eye out for rogue Lexuses." As the sun set, I walked back to my barn. The cows lowed in greeting, completely unconcerned with HOA drama. Somewhere, Karen was probably drafting a new complaint. But for the first time in months, my land felt like mine again. And that was victory enough. The HOA wars aren't over. And we need you. Karen got what she deserved. But this is just the beginning. Across the country, power-hungry HOAs are bullying hardworking folks, fining families for ridiculous violations, and trampling on property rights. And we're exposing every last one of them. Want more HOA justice? Got your own Karen story to share? Ready to join the rebellion? Subscribe to the HOA Stories now and fight back.